Right, guys, welcome back. I appreciate the comments, the likes, I appreciate everything. I appreciate the subscribers. And today we have a guest, actually another guest that's involved in sports journalism. This guy is a freelance sports journalist and wrote some articles for some of Scotland's biggest newspapers. Plus, he has a BA honours in sports journalism, which is way more highly qualified than me, and it's incredible. And he's currently, as I said, a freelance sports journalist for the Daily Record, Sunday Mail, and he's also given us his time on this Thursday afternoon at 2 o'clock. How you doing, mate? It's Jack Currie.
Oh, I'm very, very well, Kyle. Thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure.
No, it's all right, man. I appreciate your time and everything like that. Now, I think like something I'm curious about in that is a BA in honours in sports journalism. That's incredible. And probably a silly question, right? But it might not be. How hard was it to do that?
You know, it was hard, don't get me wrong. I think at one stage I kind of underestimated like the kind of challenge behind it, especially fourth year, your last year, where it becomes like your dissertation year, like your honours year. So I think, it was definitely kind of amped up a wee bit in terms of like how, but I loved it all. I wouldn't say it wasn't really hard, I would say, but it was like a good challenge because it's something that I just love doing. Like I love kind of learning more about sort of journalism, and particularly being able to do sports journalism at UWS was just a dream sort of thing. And then at that point, especially when I was kind of in fourth year, that was when I was beginning to sort of start my freelance work and really kind of amp that up. So it was really interesting, sort of mixing uni kind of with sort of beginning to do a lot more freelance work and stuff. So it was a great challenge and one that I was sort of so buzzing to complete and kind of get done.
Yeah. As I say, it's so much higher qualified than me. It's crazy. I obviously well done on you. But let's like go just a little bit before that. Have you always kind of been like, not necessarily interested in sports itself, but have you always kind of been interested in like, because obviously journalists is pretty much just like finding out stuff and getting really into like the nitty gritty stuff. Have you always been like that ever since you were a little guy, or have you kind of like grown to like adapt, maybe like changing your ways and adapting to things like that?
So like as a wee guy growing up, the one thing and the main thing I was always interested in was football. Was just everything to do with football. Like whether it was like playing about football, talking about football, whatever it was, that's just me, and it's always sort of been me. And that way kind of was especially kind of getting more into like secondary school and stuff, and you begin to sort of start to think about what kind of path and what kind of career you want to do. As time went on more and more, I was just like, right, I want to do football. I need to be involved in writing about sport and football in some way, and that's where I've sort of been very lucky because I've got a sort of few aunties and like family members who do journalism.
All right.
And I've always kind of seen and kind of heard about their work, and it was basically like at that point where I was kind of in school and I kind of got to maybe like 14, 15, and I was like, I want to be a sports journalist. Like that's exactly sort of what I want to do. And then basically like ended up like leaving school, and I managed to get into study media and communications at City of Glasgow College, and that was great because it taught me journalism, but it also just gave me that kind of broad aspect of learning about the media. And it was a kind of really great kind of thing to have at that age because it basically taught me the basics and the fundamentals that still hold me in good stead today. And I kind of think that was really important for myself to be able to go in, study at college for a couple of years, and then focus on the kind of media and communications course, but I specified in journalism. And I was basically just kind of given the sort of free reins to go and write what I want and interview who I want, and that was really, really great for me at that age.
Yeah, so we spoke before the podcast started, and obviously I have to admire yourself again for not only did you do uni and college and stuff like that, but you also did work experience and you also were doing stuff outside of that. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, no, definitely. So, well, one thing I'll actually say, so when I finished college, I was 19 when I finished college, and I applied for uni, as you do. So I ended up got a B in my HND, which I was sort of really pleased with. I was like really, really happy with that. And I applied for 5 different courses at uni, and I got 5 rejections. And to this day, I still actually can't tell you why. At that point, when I left college, I just got flat out rejected. So I was just working part-time as that at that point. And I ended up, I kind of stuck there for a bit because obviously I didn't get into uni or anything. So I was just working away at Asda, and they offered me a management position. So I ended up, I was in management at Asda at 20. in sort of 21. And like, don't get me wrong, that was okay, and it was a good career. And then it just got to like 6 months later, and I was just like, this just is not like what I want to do at all. Like, my passion's journalism, my passion's sport, my passion's writing. So at that point, I thought, well, if I haven't kind of like got into uni for whatever reason with my HND and B, then I'm going to go out and get work experience. And basically at that point, I got in touch with the Evening Times, so the Glasgow Times now, but it was the Evening Times then, and basically said, oh, I've done college before, but I want to come in and do a week's work experience. And basically that was over like a sort of summer sort of period. And they said, yeah, great, like come on in sort of thing. And I went in, done a week's work experience, and at the end of that week, I had a front page article. And it was just unbelievable. Like I couldn't really, I wasn't planning for anything like that to happen. It just was kind of almost by chance. Like they gave me a desk, my own sort of desk for the week. And they basically said, you know, if you've got stories or ideas, you know, float them to us. And ended up, I was on the desk and chatting to this guy over the phone and blah, blah, blah. And eventually I proposed the idea to the editor, and she got a tap on my shoulder about 10 minutes later, and I sort of turned around and she went, oh, you know, it's going to be a front page splash. And I was just like, wow, like that's like not what I was expecting at all. And that was like a sort of news article at that stage. But that was like my first experience. And see, even now, kind of just talking about it, it brings back that initial like smile and buzz you get of like seeing your work kind of published. And yeah, that was really the sort of fuel to my fire at that stage. And that was the stage where I was like, yeah, like, so I kind of continued to do work experiences kind of much and as often as I could. And then like reapplied to uni, and I got in just straight away for the first time, got into do my sports journalism course. And yeah, kind of never looked back from then. And that was sort of at that point where I started to begin to want to obviously do work experience in sports as well as like news. So I'd done like a sort of more work experience at that point with the Evening Times, and it was the Herald. And I kind of done sort of sports sort of work experience, and that was great. And then after that, that's when I went in and done my first week's work experience at the Daily Record. And for me, that's kind of when everything sort of just took off, because I sort of built up just like a great working relationship with all the kind of guys in the sort of sports desk. And for that point, I just haven't really looked back in terms of trying to purely focus on going, well, that's exactly where I love working. That's exactly what I love writing about. I'm just going to set out my ambition to do that. And kind of from that point, I've sort of stuck to my guns and, you know, like tried to learn as much as I can, you know, focus on writing the material that's suitable. And yeah, it's been a sort of great experience. And you still get that same buzz every single time you see an article go up and it's your name next to it. You just can't describe the feeling.
Have you got your front page article? Have you got it like up on your wall or anything like that?
You know, I don't actually have it up on my wall, but I've kept, I see every single article that I've had published in print, so like in newspapers and stuff, I've still got every single one kept.
Wow.
And that's something I'm going to just keep for my whole life, because it's about that big stack sort of now, and it's just, I just keep adding to it. And like, I should really, like my mum and that keep saying, oh, you should get it all like laminated and you should get it really nice. And don't get me wrong, I will do that at some point, so when I get round to it. But it's such a great feeling just kind of still having them. And you know, I'd love to, like, down the line, just you can look back in your memories and go, yeah, I kind of did that, and it's still kind of here right in front of me.
Well, because obviously work experience isn't paid, and I think like a lot of people I've spoken to, and they've all said the same thing. They're like, this work experience that everybody, this is exactly what I've been told by people. This work experience you hear people about, why do you think it's free? And I'm always like, I first of all, I used to be like, I'm not quite sure and all that sort of stuff. But then I thought about it and I was like, because if it's showing you're keen to work and you don't necessarily worry about the money type stuff. So how important would you say the work experience was in your eyes when it was completely free?
Oh, I mean, it's absolutely fundamental. Like I done years of work experience before I ever get paid for an article. Like I done years of work experience before I get paid for an article, and it's because that's what I wanted to do. Like I was out, you know, writing like articles on junior football. You know, I was going into the offices doing week's work experience, and you know, going along. And one of the best experiences I had was one of my, like, in the work experience was, they said to me, like, on a Thursday, you're going out here and it was interviewing, there was like 2 Celtic legends and like 2 Rangers legends there.
Mm.
And it was like, right, so I'm being taken out there. And that was like a really good experience to like interview them, talk to them. Then it was like the next day they turned around and said, today you're going with him and you're going to Murray Park to interview Steven Gerrard. And I'm just like, oh,
Damn.
wow, like you're sending me as like the work experience guy to go and interview Steven Gerrard. And I was like, right, great. Like, this is what I'm here for. So straight away, I was like, right, absolutely buzzing. Like, you're getting to go in and interview like one of the biggest named managers in the country. And we went in, and I was sitting right at the end of the row. There was maybe about 6 or 7 sort of sports journalists from all the different sort of newspapers there. And I kind of thought, well, what I'm going to do first is observe. I'm not going to be obviously the first person to jump in and ask a question. I'm going to sit and observe, and I'm going to see exactly how this works. But don't get me wrong, I was sitting there absolutely so eager, like, you know, dying to like ask my questions. And it got to kind of near the end, and I kind of like put my hand up, and you know, that way you kind of get a wee bit nervous straight away, because you're like, oh, everybody kind of turned around, looked at you, and you kind of realise, like, you know, this guy's like won the Champions League, and like, you know, like I'm about to ask him a question, and he's played Premier League and everything. And then you ask a question, and he sort of gives his response, and it was great. And then I remember we were walking out the room, and he was actually, fair play to him, he was holding the door open for every single sports journalist to walk out, which I thought, like, fair enough, like he's showing like really, really nice guy sort of thing. And we sort of all walked out the room. Next thing I know is I felt a hand coming over my shoulder, and it was him. And he went, oh, I just want to say that was like a first class question you asked, blah, blah, blah. And I want you to come back, see me at the end of the season and ask me something again, sort of thing. And at that point, I was like, and it was like when we got out, and it was the other sports journalist I was with, and he just kind of looked at me and he was like, can't believe Gerrard has taken such a liking to you. And I was just kind of like, had to laugh off at that stage, but you were just like, well, I suppose that's kind of what happened. And yeah, it was a really, really surreal experience, kind of just going and that all sort of happening, really.
Yeah, my genuine next question was going to be like, you know, I'm curious to see what keeps you motivated to go in every day. But I mean, something like that would keep you motivated for like life in general, especially when somebody, I mean, Steven Gerrard is one of the most like highly class, should be a Hall of Fame player considering what he's done, where he's been, and all the teams he's played for. So like the fact how he actually did that and said that to you, that's I'm guessing my question is still what keeps you motivated, but I'm probably going to know you're going to say that.
Well, funnily enough, see, what really keeps me motivated is my pure determination to succeed in life. And like I'm so like tunnel vision focused on being a sports journalist and being the best sports journalist I can be. And like the one thing I kind of almost take a bit of pride in is, like, I'll send all my articles to like a couple of my pals and be like, oh, what do you think? Give this a read, because I know they love football and they'll be reading all the articles and stuff anyway. And the one thing I love is my mate will turn around and say, I love your articles because they're actually just different to everything else. Like the way you write it, it's not just the kind of same. And I always try and do something unique and different. And I'd say that's like the one thing that drives me, pushing me forward, is I want to try and be the best, and I want to try and get to where I want to be, and just keep doing what I do every day, and, you know, keep doing everything with a smile on my face, because you're only here once in life, so why not do that? And, you know, a big thing for me as well was when I was at college, after 2 months after I turned 18, I actually got diagnosed with pancreatitis.
Okay, sorry to hear that.
So I've actually spent like quite, between say 18 to 22, I actually spent quite a lot of time in hospital. So at times I'd been for like 3 weeks at a time, just because that's like kind of the condition and stuff. And at that point, I always thought, well, I don't want to be kind of labelled or pancreatitis or whatever like that. Like, I still want to be successful, and I still want to go out and do what I do. And like that fuel to succeed, and that fuel to be determined, and to think, well, everybody has adversity in life, you know. Like, I may have gotten something that made me ill for a while, but something bad else had happened to every other person in this world. So, you know, I was never like just there to think, oh, poor me. I was always just, well, I'll dust myself down, get back on with it. And that's really fueled me in terms of like going, I want to succeed, I want to do well, like I want to achieve and have ambition. And I think that's really key in life, to succeed. And more importantly, doing what I want to do is the key. Like, you couldn't do sports journalism or writing about football if you were an absolute fanatic because there's so many people out there that want to do it. And unless you are so knowledgeable, so determined, you've just not got a chance. And that's the one thing I'd say, that if you're trying to get into something where there's so many people that want to do it, you need to go out and prove that, yeah, I'm keen, I'm here. And sometimes the people, the sort of higher authorities have said to me, calm down, chill out, it's all right, you're going to get there and blah, blah, blah. But I could message all the time and say, you want this or any shifts or this or that. And it's that way where I'm just always hungry to work and hungry to succeed and doing what I want to do, sort of thing.
Well, I did have a question, but I've got another question I want to ask now, is that you always hear like people saying that, it's like, especially there's a guy, it's called producer Michael. He produces like films and music and all this sort of stuff. He's good friends with Simon Cowell and all. I never knew who this guy was until YouTube, and he became pretty famous off of it, to be fair. He was already famous, but he blew up. Anyway, he actually, because somebody asked him in one of the Q&As, he said, he was like, they were like, what's the, because he produces music and everything like that, like I said, and they said, what's like the biggest thing to get into the industry? And he said, personally, is constantly try and get your head in the door and constantly get your name known. Don't just like email once, because he said, I've got people that have had like amazing he's over in the States now, but in California, but he said, I've had people having these amazing qualifications, but then again, I've never heard of their name before. Like, I've no idea who they are. I don't know where they're from. I've done nothing. But then again, yourself, that's exactly what it comes back to, as he said, about work experience is so crucial, not just necessarily to show you want to do it, but to get your name, because if nobody knows who you are, they're not going to like be like, oh, they're going to ask around if like, oh, do you know who, this guy is or this guy is? And they're like, I've no idea who that guy is, but it turns out he's amazing at what he does. You can actually end up flunking yourself without actually, doing it. But I think, like, again, sorry to hear about your pancreatitis and that, and that's obviously is really motivating. But how do you deal with like, negativity in itself then? Because I think we all, especially like just now in that, so how do you, because negativity could be like, for example's sake, obviously you do what you love to do in that, and you don't necessarily do, I know you have a part-time job, but you don't necessarily do the constant 9 to 5. So would you say you've had people maybe like look at you a little bit negatively because of that, or would you say everybody's just been like so supportive?
Oh no, I honestly, absolutely. That's the one thing I'm so lucky for, is like everybody in my family and like my friends base and my girlfriend and everything are so supportive in terms of like what I do, and like recognizing that I do it because I love it and because I think I'm quite good at it as well. That's the one thing I hate, almost in a sense. And I think it's a purely Scottish. It's said that it's such a Scottish thing about not really liking to big yourself up and all of that, which is a sort of thing. But I wouldn't feel as though like sometimes I know I can like write an article and send it in and be really, really happy with it. And sometimes you can see it go up and you read it and you go, God, like they've not really changed anything there. Like that's amazing. Like they've literally put it up as I've sent them it. And then sometimes, you'll see, oh, this wee bit's changed and, that's what I could have done better. And it's all about kind of taking it on to the next time. But I couldn't do what I've done, and I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for being allowed to do the work experience, and like continue, as you said, like I do my part-time job, like sort of 3 days a week. But even when I'm working, like there's times where if I'm working and the shop's quiet, I can sit and do an article in an hour or two. And that's like the best feeling, is just being able to focus as much as my time and trying to do what I want to do, and can ultimately, keep doing that, because, you're, as like what I said, like here once in life, and it's really, really important to like push yourself and like drive yourself forward, and most importantly have ambition, because if you're not going to have ambition for yourself, and if you're not going to have self-belief, then if you're applying for a job, then it's going to come across like that, and the person who is interviewing you, the person who's reading your CV, isn't going to have belief in you if you don't have belief in yourself. And there's a fine line of self-belief and arrogance, and like I feel as though it's important to have self-belief and back that up with, this is what I've done to have that self-belief. And it's a key in life, because if you don't carry yourself with positivity, and can I always think carry yourself with a smile, because I could say, for example, think, well, you could walk down the street and pass by somebody, and 2 months later that could be the person that interviews you, and and you don't know who it could be for a job. And you always need to try and be positive with everything in life, and things will work out for you.
Yeah, it's all the sports people that have in sports, they all say the same thing. Like I've spoken to someone at Talk Sport, spoken to someone at Hamilton Football Club, and they all say the same thing, that it's literally you have to keep that positive face around you. Like, you have to be like confident in yourself and what you do. But I think like something everybody knows they have, but they hate to admit it. And I always like asking this question because it throws everybody off guard. And I say that quote every time. But what would you say is your biggest flaw?
Oh, that's very interesting. My biggest flaw would, I don't know, because I'd say that, like, I know in myself, you could probably categorize it in a few different ways. I would maybe say technically, as like a journalist or as like a media person, I know that I can improve in stuff like video editing and like sound production, stuff like that. A wee bit kind of what we were sort of talking about yourself with what you do and stuff. That is like the area as to where I can improve myself as like a sports journalist in terms of like expanding out in terms of doing more video content. Because I know in myself that I've focused so much on my writing ability, my ability to do like bits of social media, my ability to, you know, connect, my ability to interview, my ability to, and this is the one key skill I would say that is important for a journalist, and especially nowadays, that often gets missed. And I kind of picked up on that when you were talking about the TalkSport guy and you were saying about emails. The one key skill you must have as a sports, any type of journalist, is to pick up the phone and to actually call people, because the amount of times where I won't email, I'll just phone call places, because you can ask a question. If somebody answers the phone, you can answer your question straight away to them. And that's that. They can't, unless they hang up the phone, which they won't, then they kind of have to give you an answer or say no. Whereas if you email, 99% of the time your email will just be ignored. So if like people want to interview, if people want to get work experience, if people want to get somewhere, the biggest bit of advice I would give is pick up the phone and actually make a phone call to people, because it will show so much more that you're keen, you're interested, and more importantly, confident. And that's like the one thing I've always tried to do, is be like, phone calls are so key and crucial, because it would surprise you how many people in the industry don't do it.
Yeah, no, that's funny you should say that. I've always said to people that if you're wanting a job, not in media, just in, you know, general life people, I've always, well, normal, as I call them, normal life, because being not having the normal 9 to 5 is classed as being, you know, not normal, as you probably know. I always say to people, you're best if you want a job at where's close to me. For example, the co-op. If you want a job at the co-op, don't necessarily wait until they post an ad. Phone them and speak to them. Have a conversation, because it's going to show a lot better if you've just sort of, you could email them, I guess, but I mean, they might anywhere, not the co-op in general, but anywhere in general might just ignore your email. But again, like you're saying, you have to actually speak to somebody, because someone has to be at the end of that phone. Not everybody's going to be at the end of the email. I think like something I'm interested with speaking to people in media like yourself and things like that. I'm always interested in who did you look up to as a kid, like a non-celebrity and a celebrity, because it's always interesting. Like the answers are, believe it or not, the answers are actually roughly the same with a lot of like the sports journalist guys. They're not necessarily footballers. It's necessarily like the same type of people. So who would you say is for yourself is like one normal person and one non-celebrity and one celebrity?
This is actually a really strange question, because I've had kind of people ask me this, especially in stuff like job interviews and stuff before. And if I'm like, see if I'm honestly giving what my true and honest answer is, nobody. Like, I wasn't ever really somebody that ever looked up and thought, oh, like I'm sort of, I can't really, like, I think the one thing I always looked at was my parents, if I'm being totally honest, and seeing this kind of success that they've had. And just basically that pure determination to, like, I see how hard they work, like I see like how much they want to succeed, and like how much they want to provide for like me and my sisters and everything. And like that was always for me like my main one, rather than, I couldn't say any celebrity, or I genuinely couldn't. I've never really been that type of person to look up to celebrities or anything like that. Like, I'm not like huge on like Instagram or like anything like that. Like, I just like post up like pictures if I've went out hill walks or stuff, you know what I mean, sort of thing. But I'm not really somebody who would sit and go, oh, I really want to be like that, and I really want to have what they've got. Or I know myself what I want in life. I'm very much focused on what's going to make me happy, and just sticking to that. So yeah, like if I'm being totally honest, I would say that. Don't get me wrong, I'm a huge and massive Perfect Thistle fan. And I am an absolute fanatic where pre-COVID times I would go in every week and singing all the songs, and I'd have all my favourite Thistle players throughout the years. But I would never say like I was like trying to aspire to like be kind of like them or anything like that. It's a kind of different type of, oh, they're like my sort of heroes, so to speak, in a term of footballing terms, but it was never like, oh, I really, really like want to aspire to be like them or whatever. So, but yeah.
Yeah, it's quite admirable, to be honest with you. What, you know, it's always another one is like a subject that I'm interested in, but I know that the people that have listened to the previous podcast, they're extremely interested in, and it's when they want, for example, somebody wants to get into media and they've not posted anything wrong on social media, but maybe posted about them going out a lot, or like where they're absolutely wrecked or things like that, or they're posting stuff on social media like can't wait to go out this weekend and do all this sort of stuff. Do you think when you're trying to get into media, you know, whether it be the same as yourself, because media is like such a wide, you know, radio, TV, anything you can think of, could even be behind the scenes. Do you think you do need to kind of like to an extent watch what you post on social media, or do you not think it matters as much? What's your opinion on that?
No, I definitely think you do. Definitely to a certain extent. I think the one thing that was always kind of said to me was, if you're going to like put any like media brand, say like on your Twitter, for example, you say I work for such and such media outlet, then like you need to be very careful, because like obviously, and especially you can put things like, you know, views are not mine, views are mine and not of my sort of people I work for, sort of thing. But like I would always say, like there's a very obvious kind of line. If you're trying to promote yourself as a professional, you know, as a professional, and you're trying to promote yourself as a serious journalist or a serious person in the media, then it would look really daft if one post is, oh, I've got an exclusive article here and blah blah blah, and then the next post is, oh, I'm out getting steaming and there's 20 pints, and the continuity is just not there. And I think that in that regard, for me, I would always think of it that way. And I'm sure, like, I've never obviously been in the position where I'm having to like employ somebody in the industry or anything, but I'd imagine if people were employing somebody in the industry and it was the difference between candidate A and candidate B have got the exact same experience, but candidate A posts pictures on their social media every other night that they're out steaming and candidate B doesn't, then you can kind of see who would get it if it was purely based on that. But as I said, I don't really know how much of an impact it would have. But I would always think to myself, you just kind of need to be sensible when it kind of comes to these things. And if you're trying to promote yourself as a professional, then be professional.
Yeah, you kind of need to remember as well is that when you're, you know, people in general, not just yourself, but just when you're writing stuff, especially when you work for companies like you do and work along with companies you do, it's you kind of do need to remember you're representing these companies, because your name's still there. Even if your Twitter name's completely different and all that sort of stuff, it doesn't matter, because it's still you. They'll know who you are, and as soon as they make that connection, that could lose you. You know, effectively, it could lose you like thousands of pounds a year easily if you're just not doing what you should be doing and not saying what you should be saying. But you know, you've obviously worked for like, it is quite impressive, to be honest with you. You know, for your age, and it's because you're only a year older than me, and who you've worked with and who you've worked for and stuff like that. But where do you see yourself in, like, another interview question? Where do you see yourself in like maybe five years is quite, it's not that long. How about 10 years? Where would you say you see yourself, or where would you say you want to be?
Like, if I'm being totally honest, I would just say I would love to be in like a senior football writing position, or kind of like sub-editor position or something like that, where I've, say, over the next 5 to 10 years continued and just built on my path of doing sports writing, sports journalism, you know, and getting as much experience as I can, and then kind of adding to that. And in the next 10 years, like, I'm somebody, I had this in an interview not too long ago where they said, you know, like, what's your ambition? Like, where do you see yourself? Again, kind of like sort of what you said. And the honest answer I could give was, when I go into something, I just want to get to the top. Like, it was the exact same when I was saying to you, like, I kind of had, so I didn't get into uni from college, and I was working at Asda, and they said, oh, do you want to go for like manager? Because even when I was doing that, the only way my brain could think was, I want to be the store manager. Even though I didn't want to do that, my brain just thinks top, like, want to get to the top. So my long-term plan is just to get as high and as successful as I can. And I would say my overall ultimate dream and my aim would be like, I'd love to sit and present sports, talking, like the podcast for Match of the Day, whatever. That would be my honest, absolute dream. But see if I could continue doing the sports writing with the Daily Record and Sunday Mail and everything that I do, I would honestly be over the moon and be so happy, because I love doing like my dream in terms of writing these articles and going in and doing the shifts when I can, and I just love it. And I would be lying if I said if I was doing full-time sports journalism in 10 years time, I would be absolutely buzzing. I would still love it.
Yeah, what's one thing that drives you to want to go to the top though? What's the reason for that, rather than, because I know obviously you are extremely, as we spoke about before, and you do extremely like what you do, but what makes you want to drive to the top? Is there a specific reason, or is it because of, obviously you, as yourself, you probably met the guys at the top, so you kind of want to be in a sense, want to be like them? Or is it just, what's the reason you want to reach the top? Is there a specific reason, or is it just that's how you work?
I don't really know, because I've tried to think about it before. I see myself as a very open kind of thinker, and I can kind of sit back and think a lot about myself and kind of reflect quite a lot, and that's a kind of key skill sometimes I feel as though I do have. I can reflect quite well on myself, but that's something where I've never really actually been able to put a pinpoint reason down to it. It's if I go into something, I don't know, I just want to get to the top. If I don't see myself as being in the number one top position, then I don't see myself progressing, and I just see myself being stagnant. And that's the last thing I ever want to do, is feel as though I'm not actually progressing in life. But it's weird, because I couldn't turn around and say it's anything like anybody else in my family in terms of pure wanting to just be total manager, total in control, because work-wise. But I don't know, it's just something where that's just me. It's kind of part of my personality, and I just drive and try and keep going forward, and I never want to feel as though I'm going backwards as well. I feel as though the only way forward is by keep taking these steps, and sometimes it could maybe come across in the wrong way, I don't really know, but I just always want to just try and succeed, and really just be the best version of myself that I can be. I feel as though at that point, if I wasn't trying to really push myself every day and really try and be the best version of myself I can, then I just wouldn't really be own myself, being myself sort of thing. So I just kind of need to always do what's right for me at the end of the day, I think.
Yeah, 100%. I couldn't agree with you more, to be honest with you. But I got asked this question, and I didn't know how to respond at first. And I said the only time I've ever become genuinely speechless was two occasions. One recently for something, and the second one was when someone asked me this. They're like, "Okay, Kyle, you want to be at the top. It's what happens when you get there and it's not what you think it is?" So that's my question to you. What happens if you get to the top and it's not what you think it is? It's completely different. What then?
That's a very interesting question. Something I haven't actually really thought about. Well, I kind of think, and the one thing I've learned, particularly through, say, being in hospital a few times, and for not getting into uni first time, and everything is, I've always thought, well, I've not had things just kind of handed to me in life. I've had to come over adversity, and if I really want this, I really need to push myself to go out and get it. And I'd probably say that if you got to the top and it wasn't how you thought it would, then I'd just continue on to try and overcome adversity and try to make things how they were. But I think with myself in particular, I've seen the work that the guys at the top are doing, and obviously there's extra pressures and there's extra everything involved in, but I just love the industry, and I love the feeling, and I love football and sports and writing, and and I love talking to people as well, and I see myself as a people person, and I've had that wee bit of management experience where I was kind of in charge of a group of 10 people, and at such a young age that was a great learning experience for me, because everybody when I was the manager and I had 10 team members, they were all older than me. There wasn't one of my team members that were younger than me. I was the youngest and I was the manager, but that just was such a great learning curve for me, because it sort of showed me I was going to make mistakes, but I was going to learn, and I've taken all those skills. It might even been like a management position in ASDA, but I carry them forward every day in journalism and what I do, because you pick up key skills everywhere. And like one of the kind of biggest compliments I always take was like one of my pals, and he was like you're just so switched on, like you pay attention to everything. And I always think in every aspect of life, whether you're just sitting having a chat with your pals or you're working, you can always learn something, and there's always something that can be taken out of it. And that's kind of what I've always tried to do, really.
Yeah, it's again, it's admirable how you kind of, obviously you had a pretty good job, to be fair, the store manager job at Asda, and then you've had other jobs, but then you still are like, nah, I'm not necessarily happy with that, because I'd rather follow my dream and obviously be a proper full-time in a position in a sports journalism where you're like, this is where I want to go. But there has, as I always like finding out, that drive had to have come from somewhere. Like, I understand you've been in hospital and all this sort of stuff, which again, feel so sorry for you for, to be honest. But do you inherit that from like maybe like your parents, or you said you have sisters? Is it your sisters, or is it just general, again, from what you said, because you're trying to overcome what you be, and you're effectively, as a great analogy, it's like a horse on a runway with the blinders. You kind of just you're very, very, very driven. So
Yeah. One thing I was going to say there, just because you were saying that point, was always remember like being like kind of like right at the start of like college, and I was saying like I just want to be writing about football. Like I'm not interested. And that point they said, well, you're not going to get anywhere by just knowing how to do like one thing. And like I remember like, and that was kind of the thing where that's where I was so lucky to get into doing a sports journalism course at uni, because I could just do that. And for me, rather than being tunnel visioned on one thing purely, as it's kind of came across by some people as a bad thing, for me, it's been a total good thing, because that kind of tunnel vision, that pure focus on one thing, has helped me like so much. Because if I was trying to say, oh, I want to do a bit of sports journalism here, and I think, oh, I want to do a bit of writing about politics, whatever it was, or travel, or this or that, then you're starting to become, unless you're doing very great at both things, then you're sort of starting not to be known for the one thing. And whereas for me, I've just purely wanted to be known for a sports journalist, and that's what I do. And, like that's what I kind of am good at, sort of thing. Yeah, like as I sort of said as well, like I always looked at seeing like how hard like my mum and dad had worked to like say like have like what I absolutely love, like the house that like sort of like I still stay with them, and sort of saving up just now for like my own place to buy. So obviously COVID times kind of slightly halted that. But I've got like obviously all my savings built up and basically ready to kind of hopefully move in somewhere soon. But like I've always admired like them succeeding in having like a nice house and bringing us up, and it's been great. And that's always been the level where I've never wanted to think, oh, I haven't done as well as like my mum or dad. Like, and that not in terms of like a bad thing, I feel in pressure, because it's never been any type of like pressure for them as well. You need to go out and get a job, or you need to go out and do uni. Like they would always very much like go out, do your own thing, be happy at the end of the day, first and foremost. But for me, it's always like, like I just want to go out and kind of emulate what they've done. And yeah, like that's kind of the biggest motivation for me, is just to succeed really in life.
Yeah, because it's always interesting finding out what actually motivates somebody, because again, the casual things, if you're speaking to like your mates down the pub, or you're speaking to anybody, to be fair, especially when I talk to a couple of people in the gym, it generally is, it depends what the paycheck is. Like, it's not as if it's like money, it's not as if it's like, oh, I love what I love what I do, or I'm passionate about it. It's not. It's like, well, if they're going to pay me more, I'll work more. But necessarily, that's not. Sometimes, like, I genuinely do know people that live, but work in, I better not say where they work, but they work in places and they get paid like minimum wage. But I know people that own businesses and they're not happy because they're just not doing what they want to do. So again, it does come down to yourself. I like what you're saying. You're very like motivated and driven and passionate about what you do as in sports journalism. But
because that's what the one thing that always stuck with me, and this is the one thing again I'd say to any aspiring sports journalist, is if you're coming into the sports journalism industry, or probably journalism as a whole, and you're wanting a big salary, you're not going to get it. It's not an industry that pays very well unless you're right at the top. And like you purely need to do it for the enjoyment, and like you need to do the years of free work experience before you can expect to get paid, because if you don't have, as we kind of touched upon before, if you don't have the experience to show this is me, this is the level of work I can produce, and I'm showing that I'm keen, then you're never going to get in that position. Like, I had an interview a couple of weeks ago, and that they said, like, I was like one of 5 to be interviewed, and they said I get picked, the 5 get picked out of something like 700 or 800. So to think like how many people are applying for these types of jobs, and they're interviewing 5 and 1's getting it. You need to do something different. Like, you can't just have a degree that's nowhere near good enough. Like, and like, you need to have, like, I found myself where I've built up my experience 4 or 5 years kind of doing freelance stuff and offering work experience, and to the point now where, like, I do get paid for all my articles, and that's great, and I get paid for all my shifts, and that's amazing, and I'm very fortunate to be in that position. But it's, it took me time to get there. Like, it wasn't just, and it made it feel so much better as well. Like, that first pay you got from doing the work, you were like, oh, this just feels amazing. And it still does every single time, because you think, well, I've earned it. Like, I've not just walked out of uni, or I don't just know it's not like, oh, that person's a family member, I know that person through a family. Like, everything. And that's the one thing where I think I touched upon, saying where I've got like a couple of aunties and they're in like industry and stuff like that, but I've always been the type of person where if I'm going to do it, it has to come from me. Because if they turned around and said, oh, like, Jack, I spoke to such and such, he's got your shift and you start on Monday, there would be no satisfaction out of that for me, because they've given it. So like, I've never once like been in that type of position. Like, for everything, it's always came from being, if I'm going to get a shift, or if I'm going to get an article published, or if I'm going to get a class interview, then it has to be all purely for me that's done it, because otherwise basically just it's them that's done it, and it's no anything really to do with me. So that pure satisfaction of doing the work, and writing, taking the time yourself to really think about what would be good, then doing the interview or doing the research, then writing about it, celebrating it yourself and sending it in. It just doesn't get any better than that, because I've created something from a blank Word document, and like, there's no better feeling than knowing that it's all just came from yourself. And that's the one thing that really pushes me on, is to succeed, but it has to all be from me, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I have to say, like, I've you taking me back a little bit, to be honest with you, because of what you've been saying, and like, you're quite a motivating person. I genuinely think you should be like, we're talking about, like, because I know we're both busy, as we spoke about, so we'll have to cut it a little bit short. But I do want to say, like, you said about you having a podcast and you speaking to people and you things, like, I genuinely think you should do that, because, like, again, you're very talkative and you're very, like, motivating. So if somebody that wants to get into sports journalism necessarily would watch your stuff, and then you never know, they could be like, oh, by the way, Jack, do you remember me? And you're like, you could be interviewing them at a job, but I have no idea who you are, obviously, because you just a view, and then you're like, yeah, I seen your podcast, and then now I've seen your podcast, you helped me get into the thing. So I think you're right in saying that you genuinely should do it, because I don't see why you shouldn't, because it's not as if like you're really calm or shy or that.
No, I really appreciate you saying that. No, I really do, man. As we kind of sort of spoke about, it's something I have been really interested in terms of trying to do. Like, and kind of, as I said, I done a wee bit of a podcast just about a year ago at the start of lockdown, and that was more of a test to myself to be like, keeping my hand in doing the audio editing and doing the recordings and stuff. But I've always kind of been trying to think of that kind of wee unique idea of like taking something and kind of like running with it in terms of like a podcast idea. Or what I've sort of even been thinking is like doing like a sort of small YouTube thing, and what my idea is to, and I've kind of been thinking even more recently, is maybe start something one or two things a week, and then see what happens. But yeah, maybe watch this space. You never know.
100%. And if you're needing help with that, again, let me know, because I can tell you the two best websites. Again, is hands down, as I don't mind telling everybody this, is Anchor will be your best friend. ANCHOR. Honestly, it distributes your podcast everywhere. and not like I get paid by them or if I've even spoken to anyone, but it's just genuinely the truth. Like, they genuinely will help you, even though YouTube's the biggest platform. But yeah, I want to say, like, again, thank you very much for your time, and it means a lot for you to come on along and have a conversation. They're definitely motivating.
Oh no, honestly, Kyle, thanks genuinely for having me. I've absolutely loved it, and like, hopefully, you know what I mean, like, we can catch up again. You know what I mean? I'd love to come on and chat to you again and stuff like that, and work together in the future for sure. And I really, really hope that you keep doing what you're doing, because you're an absolute brilliant host. So I've loved being here, and your America plan goes really well and stuff.
Oh, I appreciate that, man. Yeah, hopefully, hopefully, I always, like, as I say, I always, even though all the negativities everybody deals with and that, I still always look at the positive, because you never know what's going to come out of it. But what I do want to say is that, have you got social media you'd like everybody to check out, and like everybody to follow, maybe like Twitter and Instagram, you'd like people to check you out?
If anybody wants to follow my Twitter, I post all my articles and stuff onto Twitter, which is Jack Currie 19. So if you want to follow me on Twitter, you can there.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's again, I am a little bit taken back because of how motivated you actually are, and it's nice to hear. Honestly, it's good to hear. But yeah, anyway, I want to say thank you for coming on, and you have a nice night and a nice day. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks very much for having me. I'm actually off to an Italian restaurant tonight, so
damn. Yeah, I hope you do. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. See you.
See you later, man. Bye.